he fell asleep at the wheel, and the impact pushed her head into the glove compartment. But he was a very brilliant guy, a very smart guy, and he wrote all kinds of this. He would say, you can throw the Bible in the fire. You don't need to go through anybody to talk to God. My brother and my sister in an orphanage, and my dad's gonna come get me. She said, they don't come back. And I said, yes, he is. And I forgot Betty, you forgot Betty, you forgot Betty. And he said, shut up and sit. I don't actually have any pictures of me as a kid. I mean, I started one thing looking like that, and I handed it to her, and I'm thinking, oh my God.
I laid there and moaned.
I didn't talk about my story till I was in my 40s, because every time I would start to talk, my body would like shake. Fast forward upstate New York, I'm in my teens, and some Baha'i youth now, I guess, they invite me to a pizza and roller skating. I'm thinking, okay, pizza and roller skating. And I decide to go. I guess it must have been a friend that invited, or maybe it was pizza or roller. I don't even know. I don't even know why I went, because these kids weren't as cool as I was. They were, you know, but I decided to go because they were nice. Sometimes nice is better than cool. And I go to the event, and someone is saying something about, don't you believe there should be one God? Don't you believe that there's only one religion? Don't you believe that there should be only one human race? I mean, they ask questions that only an idiot would say no. And I would say, yeah, of course there should be only one God. Of course there shouldn't be racism. Of course there shouldn't be that. And the person says, well, if you believe that, you sound like a Baha'i. And I said, okay. They said, well, you want to sign the card? And I thought it was a club. I said, well, is there any dues or anything? You had to pay anything? I go, no, you don't pay anything. I'm like, okay. So I signed this card in 1971. I don't know I've become a part of a religion. I mean, they were nice people. It was pizza and roller skating with great principles. The irony of it is, because see, I was a Christian at that point. I'd already gotten baptized once or twice or three times at that point. Different ones. One was holiness, one was Baptist, one was something else. And one of the things that, first of all, my dad didn't make us go to church, but we did go to church as children, because they would knock on the door and they say, Scotty, can those kids come to church? He says, it's up to them. There's a lot of stuff wrong with my childhood, but the thing that matters most, supposedly, I was free in choosing it, even before I was competent to choose. Well, it was good food at the church, cute boys, nice music. Who's not to go? So we would go to church, but we didn't have to. See, that's interesting. And so I got to choose, and I was going to this church in upstate New York, and there was Reverend, I won't say his name since we're recording it, but there's a Reverend there. And I was very impressed, because see, I was looking for people who were really going to make a difference. I wasn't just trying to join something to be joining it. And the Reverend, he and his wife would adopt these kids who had mental issues and health issues, lots of them. And I was just so impressed, because I thought, this is what religion is about: serving, being humble, helping, loving. And then my brother lived in the town called Geneva that's adjacent. It's very close. And one day I was over visiting my brother and saw the minister come out of the liquor store with this young girl in his arms, and I was like, what? No! Because I wanted people to practice what they preach. I couldn't go to church anymore after that. I couldn't sit there and look at him Sunday telling everybody to be chaste and holy and be all of this. It was kind of like my dad listening to his relatives talk this stuff and be hypocritical. I could not stand hypocrisy. I joined another holiness church. And my sisters and I used to be singers. We used to sing a cappella. So the minister asked me, he said, would you stay after church one day? He said, because I'd like you to work with a youth choir. I said, good. Now this is holiness. I had been modeling in New York. In holiness, you can't wear makeup. You gotta wear long clothes. You gotta look dowdy and boring. And I said, well, if this is what God needs to have, okay, I'll try this one. I'm in a new town, let me do this. So I'm doing all this, and then the preacher, I stay after, for church, and he comes up and he's going to tell me about the choir and how I can be of service. And I'm sitting there, and he looks at me and he says, "You know what? You look good enough to eat." I'm like, "What? What?" I was like, "Is there any righteousness anywhere?" I just got up and marched out. Then the guy started calling me at home. "Come back to church and, I want to talk to you and I just think you're pretty." And I'm like, you're supposed to be the minister. Leave me, Finally, I had to threaten him. I said, "Okay, if you call me one more time, I will come to church, but I'm going to give the sermon. I'm going to come up and I'm going to tell him about your lecherous butt." And I might have said some other cuss words. But anyway, that's how he stopped. And I'm thinking, now there was the reverend there, here's this. These people who are supposed to be feeding the flock are defective, lamentably defective. So how are these people who need, they're the most spiritual people who love God, but the guidance is the light's gone out. Meanwhile, I was wanting to change the world. There was too much racism, too much hatred, too much condescension, too much pushing down black people. So many people talk a lot of lip service, but they're not willing to be uncomfortable. And I was looking for people who were willing to be uncomfortable by any means necessary, quite frankly, for justice. I looked at my dad's life. I looked at those slave hovels. I looked at all that stuff. I remember going into the stores at lunchtime from the field, and these people would avert your stare, and they would look down and look away, almost like you didn't even deserve to be looked at because you're dirty from the field. We were working. And at the same time, they want to, it's interesting, the day before slavery ended, they were touting black people, hardworking, this, that, and the other. And the day after slavery, the marketing complained, lazy, shiftless, no good. But, it's all marketing. And some people buy into that stuff. And so I moved from that little town up to Rochester, and I met a lady that was Muslim. And here was the thing. I wasn't afraid to die. See, people don't realize that the one thing that keeps you from soaring is fear. And I didn't have any fear. I was like, hey, let's go with it. I am either we're going to change the world, or I'm going to die trying. Kind of like Dr. King. In Rochester, New York, there was this bum who was a wino. You'd always see him when you walked down the street. He became part of the fixture. You just kind of walked around, and your eyes would avert his stare, just like I did when I was a migrant worker. I probably just went on into it. I probably didn't look at him either. He was just part of the foundation, laying there drunk. One day I'm walking down the street, and I see this wino, let's call him Joe, Wino Joe. The Muslim brothers had pulled this man up off the street in a bow tie and selling bean pies. And I was like, what? That was the most impressive thing of religion I'd ever seen, because here it was, they weren't trying to take the best of us. They were taking the least of us. They saw humanity in him. While many Christians walked by him and looked at the Muslim brothers, pulled him up and said, brother, let me clean you up. Let me sober you up. Let me wash you up. Let me pray you up. And they put life in him. It was a whole different person. Now I'm looking at religion in a whole different light. Got a Jewish friend who's nice. Christians, some good, some bad. Muslims, I'm really impressed. Now I want to be a black Muslim, the more militant type, to change the world. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Meanwhile, I meet this lady who's Muslim. She prays 5 times a day. I see spirituality there that I didn't see in Christianity. At that point, I decided I wanted to be a black Muslim. Not a regular Muslim. Black Muslim like Farrakhan, Malcolm X, that kind of Muslim. I wanted to be armed and extremely dangerous. I literally, that was my vision. That was my goal, to find them, get armed, and change this world. I almost became a Muslim. I actually had told the girl I was going to join it. She picked me up one day. We got in the back of the car, 2 guys were in the front. We drove to this temple. We opened up the doors, and the guys are sitting on one side in black, and the ladies are sitting on the left in white. Now, mind you, when I got out of the car, I have a trick. I talk fast, I do everything fast. And so the guys are walking, and she put her hand up. She said, "Let them walk ahead." And I'm like, at first I'm thinking, well, maybe she's just saying just so we can talk. So I'm cool with it. But then I'm thinking, wait a minute, do we have to walk behind these dudes? And then we get to the temple, and they're all separated. And I'm saying, oh, no. She says, no, it's okay. I said, nah. I said, I'm having second thoughts here. She says, I said, do they have to sit like that? She said, you'll learn. I said, no, I don't, no. And then they're all covered up and all that. I said, oh, no. So I said, look, she said, I'll take you back home. I said, that's okay. I'll just catch a cab. So I was that close, but it was something about my women's rights. There was just something that rang of that. I mean, if I choose to wear that, that's one thing, but it was just too much uniformity there. It was just too much whatever. And so even though she prayed 5 times a day and I was very impressed with them, and I'm still impressed with what they do, it just wasn't for me. This is when I was modeling, before I came to this area. These are in Washington, D.C. And it was really interesting because I'd finally gotten chosen as the photographer model of the year, and I was just about to get a whole lot of work, and then my day job, Kodak, transferred me here. So here was a couple of the pictures there. And just through the years, I think there's when I went to Germany once. I was teaching the Army access. I actually was a techie. Do you realize that? I was a techie. I actually was a computer programmer. So then I'm in upstate New York, and I'm doing some modeling, and we've got a modeling group, and couple incidences happen. One is that one guy's doing radio work. I meet this guy, and he says, come by, I'd like you to do some radio voiceover stuff. We get to talking, and I find out that he's Baha'i. And I said, Baha'i? Hey, wait a minute. I'm Baha'i. He said, you ain't Baha'i, girl. Because you couldn't ask me any question, and I would, if you said Baha'u'llah, I'm like, who? I didn't know anything. I just knew Baha'i nice. I knew they had a newsletter. They used to send it out. I never read them, though. I would just look at it and go, God, this is a big club. It's amazing how the newsletters would kind of follow me, but I didn't look at it. But it had that one word, Baha'i. And then my partner, we were doing fashion shows, and she started going to Baha'i firesides. And she said, oh my God, Barbara, you have to come to a Baha'i fireside with me. And I go, Baha'i? You're going to Baha'i fireside? I know the Baha'is. She said, girl, you ain't no Baha'i. And I said, well, how you spell? I said, yeah, I'm pretty sure. She said, no, girl, you're no Baha'i. She said, come to a fireside. And I said, okay, I was going to come to a fireside. But I lied, because at that time, I didn't know truthfulness was the foundation of all human virtues. That guy, the radio guy, said, hey, give me one of the books. He said it was a religion. I said, well, give me one of the books. He said, well, there's not really a lot of books. He said, what book did you read? He said, Thief in the Night. I said, well, give it to me. He said, you wouldn't get it. It's too deep. This is what he tells me. You wouldn't get it. It's too deep. And he did not give me the book. After I became a Baha'i, I realized he wasn't a Baha'i either, not by example. I mean, he may have known the name, but he was not living that life. But anyway, my job transferred me from upstate Rochester, New York, to Washington, D.C. And my friend was very upset with me. She said, because you promised you would look up the Baha'is, and you didn't. I go, look, they're everywhere. They got a newspaper. I'll look them up when I get there. She said, you promised? I said, I don't know anybody else. I'll start with them. And it was kind of an interesting kind of a thing that happened. When I got there to D.C., I met this lawyer and was going to go out on a date. I thought, wow, I'm going to like D.C. And the guy was supposed to pick me up at 7. It's like 7:15 or 7:30. I'm like, gee, I just got here and I'm stood up, And then so that little voice in my head said, well, you said you were going to call the Baha'is. And I'm like, okay. So I picked up the phone and called the Baha'i in Rockville. There was Mr. and Mrs. Love. And I called him up and I said, I know it's a weird call, but I signed this card like, 8, 9 years, I don't know, a long time ago, and I have no idea what it is. Can you tell me? Baha'is live for calls like that. And she said, sure, and they were having firesides. I remember one day I was going to these firesides and the world was changing for me. I literally, what I had gotten baptized 3 times for, I finally felt it. You can't even describe it. We're all a product of our stories. And so at this point in our evolution, we just have to say, okay, that's just our story. What do we need to do now to move forward? Forgiveness is the first part, not judging people. It wasn't necessarily those actions of the past that were hurting me today. It's me choosing to recall them and run them and replay them in my mind over and over and over again. I mean, I didn't talk about my story till I was in my 40s, because every time I would start to talk, my body would like shake. I mean, it was just, this is just what I remember. I try to remember the good parts. There's probably lots of parts that I don't want or need to remember. But I only started to share the story because I realized at some point that the story was healing other folks. I don't share it because I don't want anybody feeling sorry for me and, oh, poor Barbara. No, Barbara's got a great life. I've been happily married now. This is our 35th anniversary, and I'm married to a wonderful guy, and I'm an author of, 6 books. I've got another 15 that I'm going to put out. I've raised wonderful children. I have grandchildren. I have so much to be thankful for. It was the only thing that made sense. I was like, oh my God, that makes sense. Back in the day, I had to go out in the field and I had to work from sunrise to sunset. Now I have a little whiny voice, those squeaky voices. The clergy that I had been running to weren't that hot to me anyway. I figured, I don't know either of my grandparents on either side. Life kind of started with my dad. It was a new paradigm. That was like an aha moment. And then I learned it, and all the different pieces of the puzzle finally came together.